Okay, thanks for that, Kirsty. Yeah, just to echo Kirsty's comments there, we're conscious of how busy everyone is at the moment. However, if you do have any resources that you think would be helpful to share with others and put those up onto the National E-Learning offer, then just click on that link around Get Involved or contact me for a discussion around that and some support and guidance around that. I think we're taking a kind of very light touch quality assurance approach on the National E-Learning offer resources, but the more resources that we have up there, the better, so that we can help each other out. We're all conscious that we're very often single-member departments in RMPS, and with large numbers of pupil contacts. So the more we can help each other in that respect, the better. So thanks for that, Kirsty. Just another wee reminder while we're here in this, just about to introduce Steph, is that there are a range of Teams groups for RMPS, some of them run by Education Scotland or i.e. me, and others run by various practitioners across the country. So there's lots and lots on offer out there in terms of getting some support, getting some guidance, doing some collaboration, and being able to share resources and develop resources with other people. So if you have a look again on the National Improvement Hub, there is a resource, and I'll put the link, which is already on our RMPS Teams area, to that, and that shows you, gives you a table with all of the Teams networks for RMPS and my other subjects, as well as some other subjects such as modern languages and social studies. So that link on the RMPS network at the moment. So I'm going to now introduce Steph White. Steph White is a practitioner, RMPS practitioner in Fife, and Steph has very, very kindly agreed to share how she's been approaching remote and online learning. Some of you may know Steph. Steph has a fantastic resource sharing Teams group, and she might say something about that, as well as a blog she does as well, which has some fantastic resources on it. So I'm going to pass over to Steph and let her give you that perspective from the practitioner's point of view. So over to you, Steph.
Hi. Sorry, I'm just waiting on this loading.
It's there.
Oh, there we go. Hi. So, as Joe said, I'm Steph White. I've put my details up there if you've got any questions as you kind of go through this. You can email me, or at Learning RMPS is where you can find me on Twitter if you want. I'll talk about that in just a wee second or two. So I'm here kind of just to say how I've been delivering RMPS virtually or through kind of this online learning. In elements it's going well, in other elements it's not going well. And I think the biggest thing is you'll know yourself, you'll know what your pupils are, you'll know about that relationship. So what might work for one person might not work for another. So this is kind of what's going well for me. So the first thing was sharing of resources. So I started learningrmps.com about 5 years ago as a way to kind of break down the barriers for pupils. So they weren't needing a login to go in and access course notes and things like that. And so from there it's grown and grown. So there's kind of things like revision guides, course notes on there, links to websites. When they're doing assignment research, I might put some topics up there, things like that. And I know that I can see from the stats it's a well-used resource around the country. But I also know that the kind of pitfall of that is that I'm a one person. I'm teaching all the time, and so updating it is maybe not top of my priority. But so it's something that you can guide I'm happy for you to guide your pupils to. I'm happy for you to use yourself, but just kind of that's a kind of warning that comes with it. I also set up at the start of last lockdown, it was a Microsoft team for sharing resources, kind of just putting it into an easy way to format it. We kind of came up with there's a team of moderators on there, or admins, that we're just kind of, people are uploading resources, we're kind of just checking to make sure that they are easy to access, that they're resources that you can just almost take off the shelf and teach if you need to. But we probably all know that when we're given resources, we always tweak them, adapt them, put bits in, take bits out. But they're there. There's lots of courses on there that are brilliant, and so people have been sharing them. We've been developing them. There's little teams working together. So if you want to join that team of sharing resources, you can pop me an email or a wee message, and I'll join you in. So that's what's going well with sharing resources. Secondly, embracing this opportunity for trial and error. During this kind of lockdown and the kind of one back before last summer was the kind of opportunity for me to try new things. One thing that I tried that kind of worked quite well was doing podcasts or voice notes. I know that Brian has talked about how we can how we can make information more accessible. If we're given a big block of text, we're maybe not paying it as much attention as we maybe should be. And pupils are exactly the same. And so something that I tried to encourage was them listening to a podcast where I recorded their notes. And so it ended up being like a 20-minute almost podcast that I'd encourage them to go for a walk and listen to. Also doing feedback via voice notes has been working really well as well. Because it's only taken me 1 or 2 minutes to record a voice note as opposed to kind of 5 to 10 minutes kind of typing out feedback, emailing it back to the pupils, that kind of thing. And so I've just been doing that using the voice note apps on my phone, but I know that there's different kind of apps and things, wonderful things to record voices and send back, and it depends on the platform that you're using as well, but that's worked for me. Something I tried as well was using sways. I know that I've seen some fabulous sways, but for me, my pupils didn't enjoy them. But from that, I got feedback from the pupils, and I think that's really important, is when you're trying something new is to get that feedback from pupils. I know that in some subjects, pupils are loving sways, whereas in others, they're not. And so that kind of taught me that I should be really speaking to them. Rather than spending hours making a sway, I can spend 20 minutes making a podcast, and I can get the same amount of engagement from the pupils. OneNote is something that I've kind of dabbled in but not tried. On the call the other day, we kind of talked about OneNote, and other teachers were sharing their wonderful OneNotes, and that's something that I'd love to get more involved in. And I know that there's different kind of guides on how to use OneNote and things like that. That's something that maybe I will use when we go back to school in the future. But feedback was that kind of, as I said, really important to kind of get your feedback, because what works for one class, one pupil, one year group might not work for others. Other things, workload hacks. Our workload is massive anyway. So things that have kind of helped kind of reduce workload or make working better is things like rubrics on Microsoft Teams, whereby you can insert your success criteria, and it's just a case of kind of ticking what kind of box they fit into, and it makes it kind of a lot easier. That it just saves you kind of typing out the same feedback over and over again. Microsoft Forms, Kahoots, although that says Kabooms. Kahoots has worked really well. These are all things that online, it's kind of, Microsoft Forms can mark itself, same with Kahoots, and it gets that kind of instant feedback, that instant gratification that some pupils kind of, am I right? How many out of 10 did I get? And so that kind of works. And working with others. So whether, I know that some people might be in single person departments, but working within the kind of network of RME teachers and sharing, have you got something for first years on Islam, and sharing that backwards and forwards has kind of been quite helpful as well. So that's my kind of what's going well. What's not going well, trying to replicate school. I think that's something that I struggled with at the start of both lockdowns, was trying to replicate that same, what was going on in school, that same discussions, and understanding that actually the pupils were not coming at me from the same way, and we don't know what's happening in their house and how they're accessing the information. So instead, kind of reevaluating that and think about how can we use this time how can we make use of the fact that most pupils now have access to digital technology, whereas in class we might have to have like one laptop between two, or you're maybe wanting to watch something but you're not wanting to waste a whole double period, or if you're in core RME and you're one period a week watching like a movie that you know is really good and really thought-provoking but actually can take weeks to watch. So instead, using that time to think, right, well, I'm going to give you that movie to watch this week, and next week we can discuss it. So think about how you can use this time better. The kind of idea of quality or quantity. So do we want one good piece of quality work is better than the quantity of kind of getting lots of information from pupils or getting them to do lots of things? And I think really chunking it down even further than you might expect, even for pupils at higher. I've found chunking down really small baby steps has worked better in terms of engagement, in terms of what I'm getting out of the pupils. And another thing is I've kind of focusing on the knowledge rather than the skills. I find skills are quite hard to teach remotely, and so I know that I'll prioritise that when I go back to school. And so I'm letting pupils kind of focus on their knowledge just now and focus on kind of building up their knowledge with their RME and RMPS. What's also not going well is discussions. So subject discussions are not happening when I'm logging into Teams. We're getting a small amount of pupils, and whether they're wanting to discuss what the work is, or often they'll kind of discuss about, especially the seniors, have you got an offer from that university? Have you filled in that UCAS form? What's going on? And so actually, can be quite frustrating, but actually as we go on, it's quite good to embrace that time to build these relationships with pupils that we maybe don't get the opportunity to, because in a normal year we're always kind of thinking the SQE deadline's looming, we can't waste time on this, and so yeah, using that time to embrace the relationships. In the discussion we also talked about the use of whiteboards online. I've got a couple of links to different whiteboard softwares or websites that people recommended that are quite good to kind of combat the fact that discussions aren't happening, that pupils are keeping their microphones muted, their videos off, is using online whiteboards. So I'll talk about that in just a wee second. My key takeaways are don't overcomplicate things. Simple tasks, make it easy to do. Don't have lots of links of click on this link, answer 3 questions, then do this task. Even if it takes a couple of weeks, you will get better quality stuff. Don't think that, oh, I must have like an all singing, all dancing lesson. Sometimes the really simple lessons are the ones that are most effective, that the pupils seem to engage with better, and they seem to kind of work. They seem to kind of get better with me, I've found. You've got to imagine as well at home, they might have other siblings trying to do home learning, they've got the telly on, there's someone else working from home, they've got 3 dogs in the background. You've got to think about that and think, how can I really simplify this down for the pupils to make it quite easy to understand? Being mindful of screen time, both our own screen time, but also the pupils' screen time. That's why I encourage podcasts, encourage them to go for a walk. Junior classes, I did things like getting them to go and take a picture of their while they're on a walk, and then so that they were doing something away from a screen, that they weren't just constantly kind of a slave to Microsoft Teams, I suppose. Also, as I said before, their attention spans are lessened. And so, again, it's all about that quality or quantity. Something to take away for yourself was to remember what you've learned. Use this time before we're kind of we're into this blended learning phase, and then we're going to go back to school. And even in future times where there's not a pandemic, is to use this time to reflect on what could you take back into your classroom. You've had a year long during this pandemic of your CPD, you're learning as you're going, you're learning all this digital learning. What could you take back to the classroom? For example, for me, I'm going to use Teams for tracking, using the grade book and the insights, using it for filing so that I'm not having to store massive portfolios of evidence for like outcomes and things like that. Record keeping, and also giving feedback so that pupils can go back and see their feedback, as well as I can go back and see their feedback. Maybe in the future, I'm not at a school that's got one-to-one digitally, but maybe in the future using things like OneNote instead of jotters, and that kind of thing. But I think you need to remember you've learned so much, is not to go back and just put Microsoft Teams to one side. Instead, use that, try and keep that going. And finally, just remember, as Joe said, we're not alone. You might feel alone in a single person department, or that there's not much out there, but there's lots of support out there. There's a network of resources of support. Joe's put together a massive list of different teams and different groups. I've obviously run a team, but there's lots of different kind of teams for different scenarios as well. And also there's the Facebook group, and there's also Twitter as well. But take them both with a pinch of salt. Remember, even in our own personal lives, we only put the best things up on social media, and it's the same with teaching. That teaching Twitter can be brilliant for ideas, but also it can kind of knock our egos a wee bit sometimes, is when we see people posting these brilliant lessons that you're doing, and you're thinking, I've just done a past paper question, and they're out making paper mache balloons or whatever. Just keep in mind that it's we only put the best up there, so it's good for ideas, but don't feel like I need to be doing that all the time. So I've popped up some links and things to try from the discussion that happened after the presentation, just to kind of bring it all together in one easy kind of piece. So we talked about OneNote. So using as a jotter is good for real-time reading and collaboration. There's a link there to kind of how to use it. Microsoft Forms is good for self-marking, and it can be more user-friendly for pupils, as well as being able to type in their answers. I've used that previously before COVID for things like end of unit assessments where pupils might need ICT. I've got the whole class to do their assessment on a Microsoft form, so that, again, the pupils that maybe need the ICT are not being singled out for needing to use the ICT, but also it's all in the one place. It's all easy there, and I know where all the kind of evidence is. Whiteboard.fi was the interactive whiteboard, but Teams also has a whiteboard channel that you can use. I've had a wee look at that. That looks brilliant, that you can kind of ask a question and pupils have their own whiteboard that they can write on. Saves the whole holding up thumb and looking to see what your friends wrote and writing the answer down. So it's kind of just gone digital. Kahoot is brilliant for engagement. You can write your own questions, or there's normally questions up there. Audacity was recommended to kind of record voice notes and audio. Spiral.ac, that was where you could verbally ask a question and pupils could type in their answers, and then you can show it. It's a little bit like Kahoot, but without having the question on the board. The question is just asked verbally, but you get to keep a record of it. It looks really brilliant as well. Rubrics, I talked about that. There's a YouTube video there, a link to that, again, for making it really simplified for marking. The e-learning offer that Kirsty talked about, I've used some of that as well, especially the kind of click view videos. Often in RME, we see a good documentary and we wish we got a copy of it. If you have a look on the West OS or the click view, things like that, there's a whole wealth of documentaries and things on there which are really brilliant to use, good for clipping bits out. Often documentaries are really long, but you only want a wee clip of it. So that's really brilliant. There's lots on there and lots of lessons on kind of skills and things that you can just dive in, take, set as a home learning task while you're teaching in school, that kind of thing. And then the Moral Machine is quite a good kind of game for RME based on the trolley problem if you're doing a kind of remote teaching, getting the kids to go and discuss that and come back. So that was some of the things that we discussed during the kind of discussion part. But if there's anything there that you're not sure about, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll put up, you can see my details are there.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Steph, I thought for a moment I hadn't unmuted myself yet again. Really comprehensive, I think, approach to remote and online learning. Lots of fantastic tips and techniques. and signposting there for folks watching this, if you like, as a catch-up. Just a couple of things to pick up on that people at the original meeting on Tuesday had kind of, I suppose, been attracted to or pointed out. One, I think, was this idea of, giving learners a task to do, walking around with their phone, taking some photographs, and the more I thought about that, the more I thought you could actually do something like, a specific focus on, say, if there's a world religion that you're studying at national qualifications level, can you photograph a church or a religious building or something like that? Not people. I don't think that would be advisable. But the other thing might be something in terms of belief and morality. Photographs of things that might raise moral questions in your community. Now, that could be something as simple as some litter lying around, or some graffiti on a wall or something like that. Again, bearing in mind that you wouldn't be asking young people to do anything that would put themselves in any kind of at-risk situation, but just to have them thinking about those things, religious and philosophical questions. A simple picture of something that makes you think about an ultimate question, one of these big questions of belief, and how might the photographs you're taking be used to kind of illustrate those. So those were really attractive to folks who were there on Tuesday. The other thing was mentioned, that moral machine thing, because during Brian's presentation, of course, he mentioned some of the online games and quizzes and interactive stuff and things that really get young people engaged. And that moral machine, as I say, is about the trolley dilemma, and it's actually about driverless cars. So there's a great link to STEM there as well, and technologies and all sorts of stuff, and a great one for young people. And actually what's good about it is that it becomes progressively more complex. So it starts off with a really simple trolley dilemma, and before you know it, it's more and more and more complex. And so young people really are challenged to think about, well, what's my moral take on this, and how is that changing with the context that's been presented to me. Another couple of things that came out, we pointed out the Wakelets there as well. There's some resources there, and BBC is another good one-stop shop for resources on RMPS. There's lots and lots of good video material there, so have a look at that. And I suppose the final thing that came across, and I think this has come across in an awful lot of discussions that we have had about remote and online learning, and I'm sure Brian and Kirsty, even though they're not RMPS specialists, would, I'm sure, agree that at the end of the day, it's about the pedagogy, and for me, that's where it starts. It starts with good learning and teaching. I wouldn't suggest, and maybe Brian and Kirsty won't agree with this, I don't know, but I wouldn't start with the technology. I would start with the pedagogy. What is it that you're trying to achieve here? What's your outcome? How do you think you're going to make this engaging and exciting for learners? And then how might you use technology to support that? So that's just some of the flavour of the things that came out. So now, hopefully, for those of you who couldn't make it, you've got that sense of the conversations that we had and the presentations that were made, and there's loads and loads of material online and loads of links, hopefully now on that network site. I'm just going to ask if Kirsty or Brian want to come in just to add anything finally.
Just from my perspective, no, you're absolutely correct, Joe. Always work out what it is you want to do before you decide what tool to use, not the other way around. I think that's very good advice there. So that's the only thing from me.
Absolutely, and I would say that there's constantly kind of new articles and updates put on the digilearn.scot site. So please do try and bookmark that site and visit it kind of where you can. And you can follow the Digilearn Scot account on Twitter too, so you might find some useful helps, videos and tips from that.
Okay, thanks very much, Brian and Kirsty. So just one last thing to pick up from what Steph said, and it's sort of a frame we've heard all through lockdown, and we've all used it, and that is, we're all in this together. You're not alone. You might be a single member department, you might be geographically quite isolated But in terms of the supportive community that is the RMPS and the education community in Scotland, you're not alone, and there's plenty of places to turn to for support. So if you do have any particular questions around this, obviously there's the RMPS team site. Please put questions in there. Contact me at any time. All my contact details are on there. Just a final reminder that we have drop-in sessions on the RMPS network every Tuesday, every week from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And we don't have any particular focus for those. We were looking at quality assurance and various processes, but now that's being done on a Friday afternoon, 3 till 4. So we're not doing that there, but it is a drop-in session. You can come along, collaborate with your colleagues, talk to your colleagues, talk to me, spend an hour, bring some resources that you're doing. There's all sorts of possibilities there, and that's available every Tuesday, every week at 4 o'clock. So it just remains for me to say a huge thank you to Brian for his presentation around all the technical aspects, and hopefully there's stuff there that you've learned. I certainly have things that you could put into practice in your own context. Thanks to Kirsty for the original organisation and for the NELO update, which again sounds like a Hollywood movie, but thanks for the National Learning Offer update. Again, keep your eye on that because things are always changing. And of course, the final, a big, huge thanks to Steph White. Steph, like every other practitioner in Scotland at the moment, and certainly our RMPS practitioners, is hugely busy, but has given up her time to do this, not once but twice. So thanks very much to you for that, Steph. And as I say, remember, if there's any issue you'd like to follow up, please contact us. So thanks for watching this, and best wishes for what remains of the term and the school year.